So here I was showing, we last ended with a map of the Ottoman Empire in the 16th century, okay? And we looked at its rule in Africa, Middle East, um, and all the way up into Europe, okay? And so this gives you an idea, right, of the vastness of this. Here's Armenia, by the way, since I just mentioned this, Kurdistan, um, Anatolia right here. Here's where Constantinople used to be. Okay, and so essentially they were, uh, had pretty good dominance of the Mediterranean Sea here, right? And so again, this is a good you know way to kind of see the breadth of this. Here's the Holy Roman Empire. Here's Europe, Austria. Remember, we talked about the siege of Vienna. You see how far they were reaching. Now, to the right here, we have Persia, Tehran, right here, right? Okay, so, which leads me into going back and returning to Persia. We know, right, as we've learned in this class, that Persia is a significant historical uh, uh, nation, and that it's went through a lot of things from the times of Alexander the Great. We talked about Zoroastrianism, and we talked about it being conquered by Islamic conquests. But we also talked about it that in context to its competition and continuous battle with the Eastern Roman Empire, it's been an occupier of Egypt, big legacy. So we return now. Now Genghis Khan and Tamerlane brought Persia massive devastation. Okay, which I cannot really overstate, but at the same time, um, I read sources and it says up to 90%. That may be, I think that's probably debatable. But what's not debatable is that it really, they really left their mark in a very terrible way. And then yet, as we saw in the last lecture, many Turks and some other ethnic groups that accompanied them settled and converted to Islam, the very religion and people that they nearly decimated. So the rebuilders, the people who were to build Persia back up, called themselves the Safavid movement, named after a Kurd. He may not be Kurdish. This may not be a debate that a lot of you are fully concerned with, but to say that he definitely had Kurdish ancestry. In any case, Safi ad-Din, okay, is the one that this is named after. This is 1252 to 1334 time period that we're talking about, okay? And so the Persian Safavid Empire is really a significant spot to start. I mean, if you wanted to look at Iran now and you wanted to just try to understand, Persia / Iran, in the context of the Islamic world and its legacy, this is a good place to start. I mean, ancient Persia is a great place to start if you want to talk about Persia. But if you want to talk about like really pinpointing many things in context to now, this is the part that's really great to start. Okay, so excuse me. Safi ad-Din claimed descent from Ali and Muhammad. By the way, you'll notice this, that every time, many times when a Islamic leader is trying to take power, he'll claim to be descended from Muhammad and or Ali. Even the would-be caliph of the Islamic State now, I don't remember if I mentioned this before. He was known as al-Baghdadi, but I also watched a documentary and he's called himself al-Qurayshi after the tribe of Muhammad. So he too is trying to claim that lineage, right? To add some legitimacy. All right, so I don't know if maybe he is related, but I'm just noticing that a lot of leaders, right, and I've read this many times, tend to want to claim the prophet when they're taking power. Okay, so he founded an order of Turkish Sufis. Sufism, we don't have time to really go into. It's Muslim mysticism, Islamic mysticism. Very much the Saudi Arabian regime right now hates Sufis as much as they hate Shiites. They see them as heretical. Mystics tend to follow like a mystic guidance counselor, if you will, called a pir, a sheikh, different kind of titles, and they have a lot of secret rituals. They pray at the shrines of saints. These are seen by conservative Muslims to be anti-Islamic, but for the most part, Sufism has been incorporated into Islamic history in the mainstream in many cases, but it's become much more controversial, I think, in recent centuries. But having said that, he did found an order of Sufis. In 1501, forces led by his descendant Ismail unified the country and called himself the Shah, okay, and made Shiite Islam the state religion. This is what's really significant. So prior to this, Persia was Sunni. This is the so it's relatively recent. I mean, if you look at in terms of history, it's not recent, but I mean, 16th century, okay, is only how long that they have been officially Shiite. And this is also here him, going back to calling himself the Shah, okay, and the Shah is a term of a Persian monarch, okay. They then became a great opposition regime against the Sunni Ottoman Empire, okay? And so this goes back to what I was saying when I was mentioning the Ottoman Empire. It could be more complicated for you to be a Shiite than it might be to be a Christian or Jewish. And I think it's fair to say that probably being Sunni would be the same in the Safavid. And by the way, the Ottoman Empire did have many Shiites in it, and the Safavid did have Sunnis. But they, ultimately were leading that. And, there's some debate that I remember I was discussing this in my upper division history class, that the turn to Shiite Islam may have been to justify being an Islamic power that could oppose another Islamic power and not be considered Muslim against Muslim. Because see, in Islam, officially, a Muslim cannot be warring with another Muslim. And as I've mentioned, in Islam, the criteria is very simple. You say there's no God but the God and Muhammad's God's messenger, and you believe in all of the articles of faith, you're a Muslim. And it says you don't go to war with Muslims in the Quran. It's very simple. Well, politics, when people in politics want to justify something, how do you justify it? Oh, well, if you're this type of Muslim, then you're not a real Muslim, henceforth I can justify. And actually, maybe you're worse because you're an apostate, you're a traitor. You're worse. The Christians and Jews just need to accept the prophet. They're a part of a tradition that God was with, and they're just a little behind. But you, on the other side, you are a heretic. You're actually worse. This can end up being the rhetoric used to use justification. But by the way, I also need to mention there are countless examples of Shiites and Sunnis getting married and having kids, in the same way that Protestants and Catholics. My dad was raised Roman Catholic. My mom was Protestant, both very staunchly in one way or the other. My dad happened to lean more into the Protestant side, but sometimes it goes the other way around. My my cousin, she married a Catholic and tilted in the Catholic side. So just like all these things, there's never a one case scenario that we can go on. But again, you can see though how this legacy then was solidified, especially when we look at the earlier stages in the conflict of Shiites and Sunnis. Okay. All right. So I'm going to end here, and I'll continue on to the next lecture.